Hi there, I'm Anmol, and today we would be discussing about Git and GitHub. So let's get started. First and foremost, what is Git and what is GitHub? So to simply put it up, Git is a version control system that actually lets you manage and keep track of your source code history. So whenever you're making any changes to your code and you want to get a track of it, and say suppose multiple people are working together in your team on the same project. So if you want multiple developers to work in a collaborative manner, so Git is the solution to it. Now, what is GitHub then? Is it any different from what Git is, or is it the same? So, as I told you, Git is simply a version control system that would help you in code versioning. Okay, so whenever you're making any changes, it would help you keep track of it. Okay, and you can revert back to the previous version and so on and so forth. Whereas GitHub is a cloud-based hosting service that actually lets you manage your Git repositories. Okay. So if you have an open source project that actually uses Git, then GitHub would help you to better manage it. So it's like a wrapper over it that offers you more services. So Git is a free and open source version control system. And not only Git is a version control system. If I talk about UiPath, it offers you integration with 3 version control system, namely Git, TFS, and SVN. Okay, so we would be discussing about Git in this particular video, and later on, we can even discuss on how to, work with SVN or how to work with TFS. So Git is used for tracking changes in the source code, enabling multiple developers to work together on a non-linear development. So now suppose when you're working in a team, you've got a say document understanding project and multiple developers, say 2-3 developers are working on the same project. And if you're not using any version control system, for you guys to actually club up your work would again be a very tedious and overhead work. So for you to work collaboratively in a non-linear way, so that you do your work, the other person does its work, and the third person also does its work, and all of them gets clubbed up. And whenever you want a latest, say suppose you took a leave today and you do not know what the other developers have worked on. So now when you come tomorrow, you'll just take a latest of the code, which means whatever they have worked till now, you'll get a latest version on your machine to work on. So you can start working from there. Whereas GitHub is an online software development platform used for storing, tracking, and collaborating on software projects. So it enables developers to upload their own code files and to collaborate with fellow developers on open source project. Okay. So this is what Git and GitHub is, and it's not specific to UiPath or it's not specific to RPA. It is used all across the development stuff. Okay, so it's not specific to any language or anything as such. Anyone and everyone can use Git and GitHub for version control system and better managing and tracking of your code files. And it is, and Git is, you can say, a very famous open source version control system used heavily among developers. Now, what are the features of GitHub? Why is it so much in use, or why is it so much common, and why everybody is using it? Because of course it has numerous advantages, and that is why it is being heavily used. So first is project management made easy. So you need not to worry about keeping track of everything. Okay, the version control system would take care of everything. And suppose even if you lost your local copy, your laptop crashed or something happened, and your laptop isn't working, it's just okay, because your work is also stored on a cloud, so you can easily access it from anywhere. Then increased safety. Of course, the code that you're saving it over there is safe as well. You have an option to make it public or make it private. If it is public, it would be accessible by everyone. If it is private, it won't be accessible by everyone. You also have an option of that you give access only to your team members or only to members in your organization to it, so that anybody from outside the organization cannot access it. Effective team management, because whatever work you are doing can also be accessed by anybody in the team, and they can also kind of contribute and collaborate with you to work on it. Improved code writing, increased code safety, easy code hosting, because it is very easy to host it on the server. Secure cloud storage, and easy evaluation of each other work, because you can easily access it and you can easily collaborate and contribute to it. Now, getting a Git repository. Now, slowly and gradually, we're moving towards, storing the data on the Git, or whatever is existing on the Git, how you can access it. So there are two ways. So suppose whenever you create a new project, if you want to actually store it and start the version control system, so what you'll do on your local, when you've started a project that is currently not under version control system, which means currently you're not using Git, SVN or TFS. So first of all, the one thing that you can do is you can turn it into a Git repository and start tracking it. Or the other thing is that suppose one of your teammates has already created a repository and is working from say 2-3 days, and now you also have come into that particular project and you want to start working on it, start collaborating with that particular team member. So you can clone an existing Git repository from elsewhere, which means you will clone the repository that he has created. Clone, if you talk in layman terms, clone means that you will create a copy of it. Okay, so that is what you would be doing. So before actually getting on to that, how do we actually, turn a local directory into a Git repository or clone an existing Git repository, we'll see how do we actually download and install Git. So for that, what you'll have to do, you'll simply go onto your browser and you'll type Git download for Windows. You can even download it for Mac. So the first link that you'll get, Git SCM link, you'll click on it. You'll select, you want it for Mac, you want it for Windows, or you want it for Linux. So you click on Windows, and based on your setup, you will go on downloading 32-bit or 64-bit. Once you download it, you will simply install that particular thing. So suppose if I download this particular thing, as I click on it, it will start downloading. As soon as it starts downloading, I'll just double click on it and I'll go on installing it. So I'll just have to press next and go on that you accept the license agreement, and you'll go on installing it. Once you have done that, for me, I've already installed it. So you can open command prompt. Okay. You can get to know the version of the Git by typing, I'll just maximize it. Okay, so you can type Git version, and this will give you the version of the Git you're currently working on. Okay, now what you'll do, once you have done this, you have installed it and you've checked what version you're working on, you actually have to now let Git know who you are. So this is important for version control system, as whenever you are committing anything, whenever you're storing anything onto the repository, or whenever you're trying to retrieve anything from the repository, you'll have to let Git know who you are. So you'll have to tell your username or your email. Okay, for that you must have an account as well. So go and sign up and create your GitHub account. And if you see here, signed in as Anmol-Yadav, this is actually my username. So you'll have to actually tell Git who you are, and how you will tell. And when you're telling Git who you are, so you're actually trying to configure Git. So how would you tell that? So you'll type git config global user.name. So what is my user.name? So I'll tell Anmol-Yadav. So that's my username. Similarly, I'll also tell my user email. So that would be my email ID that I used to sign up to Git. So I'll tell my email ID. So that is how I told Git that what is my username and what is my user email. Now, suppose if I want to retrieve what is my user email, so this is my user email. If I want to retrieve what is my username, so this is my username. Okay. So, and now why have we used global? Okay, so when we are using global, so we are actually setting the username and email for every repository on our computer. If we only want to set it for the current repository, we can skip adding global. So we can simply go on saying git config user.name this, git config user.email this. But if you want to make it all across similar, so then we can go on saying this. Okay. Now coming on to, suppose I have this project open here that is currently not on Git. Okay, so it is not under any version control system. Now, if I want to put this particular thing, I've created a local project that I want to convert to a Git repository. So we'll see what are the steps if I want to convert this particular thing to a Git repository. Okay. So first of all, over here, you can see I'm currently residing on my C drive, whereas the project that I want to put onto the drive is in the D drive. Okay, so I'll change the drive. So for that, the command is cd. Cd means change the current working directory. Okay, so I'll simply say D drive. So now I'm on my D drive. Now inside my D drive, I want to change my current working directory to this particular directory. So I'll copy the path. I'll give the command cd, which is change directory, and I'll give my path. And now I'm inside this particular path. Now, once I'm in this particular path, so once you've navigated to the correct folder, here you can actually go on initializing the Git. Okay. And what does that mean when you say that you want to initialize it? Which means we would create a Git repository. Okay. As we do Git, so for initializing the command is git init. From the name itself, it is clear that we are initializing. So init is actually a short form of initialization. Okay. So I'll do git init. So it says initialized empty Git repository in this particular location. By default, this .git folder is hidden. If you actually want to view it, you'll have to go to view and you'll have to select this hidden item. Okay, so as of now, you cannot see a .git repository. Whereas in the command prompt, it says that we have initialized an empty Git repository. But if you actually want to see it, so there are two ways. Either you can do it from the command. From the command, you'll type directory, dir /a:/h. H is for hidden items. So as you do this, you will see there are two directories that are hidden. One is .git and the other is .local. So if you actually go here, you'll not see .git and .local here. So you'll have to go to view. You'll have to select this hidden item. As you do, you'll see this .git and .local residing here. Okay. Now, you surely have initialized a Git repository here, but still nothing in your project is being tracked yet. Okay, so nothing that you're doing is being tracked. So if you do git status, so it will say no commits yet and you are on branch main, and these are the untracked files. So all these untracked files, all these files that are here are being listed here, and it is saying nothing is being tracked. That is because you have not done any commit, you have not pushed any file to the repository. And when I say all this, what does this actually means? Untracked files, unmodified files, commit, staging. So what all does this mean? Let's try to, understand that thing with this particular diagram. So over here, you can see, I'll pick up a pointer. Okay. So you can see there is untracked file, unmodified file, modified file, and staged file. Okay. So when we say untracked file, which means whenever you initialize a repository, nothing is being tracked. So none of your files are being tracked by the version control system, which in our case is Git. So once you add the file, it will go into staging. Okay. And when all the files are in staging, which means you actually have added all the files, and now when you commit, so this file would actually fall under the version control system. So first of all, you have to add the file. That becomes that you have staged the file. And then if you do a commit, then those are the unmodified files, which means it is under version control system. So if you edit that file, it becomes modified file, which means suppose you created 4 files. Okay. And why all these things is coming into picture? Now listen to me very carefully. Suppose you have 4 files. Okay. You have one sequence file, you have one flowchart file, you have one log file, and something. Okay. So you worked on 4 files. With 2 files, you're very clear that, okay, I've completed the work and you really want to commit it. Whereas the other 2 files, you do not want to commit because still there's a lot that you can do before you actually commit it, or you're not sure about the logic or the things that you've placed in that particular file. Okay. So let's name that file a.xaml, b.xaml, c.xaml, and d.xaml. You're very confident about c.xaml and d.xaml that you actually want to commit it, but you're not very much sure about a.xaml and b.xaml. Okay, so you can add all the files, but you'll only commit, say you only want to commit c.xaml and d.xaml. Okay, and whereas in the remaining two files, you still want to work. Okay, so while you're adding git add, so you can only add git add c.xaml, git add d.xaml, and you can either skip adding b.xaml and a.xaml as of now. Later on, when you want to, you can even go on committing that. So once you have committed, so the changes that you have done till now has all been committed and is in track. Okay, so those are unmodified files, kind of, that you've done the commit, you've done the changes, you're done with the changes. Now, if you edit those file becomes modified. And now when you do the command git status, it will actually show you that these files have been modified. Okay, and then you need to commit it again. So that is what are the different stages. Okay, so as of now, when you did git status, you can see it says no commits yet, and it is residing on branch main. Okay, it is because you've not added any files. All these files are untracked. Now, if I go on adding files and I'll say git add star asterisk, which means I want to add all the files. Okay, I do not want to add specific files. I want to add all the files. So as I do this, and now if I do git status, it says no commits yet, changes to be committed, and it is listed all the files. Okay. And if you do git rm minus this hyphen cached, and you tell the file name. So as you tell the file name, that file would become unstaged, which means when you commit, these files will not be counted. Okay. Now, if I go on commit, git commit. So as you did git commit, so now it says 22 files changed and 875 to insertion, which means now you have actually committed everything. And now if you go on doing git status again, so it says on branch main, nothing to commit, working tree clean, which means there are no changes that needs to be tracked. Now, if you actually go and change something, say check git status. Okay, then you've made the change. Okay, and if you again do git status, it says main.xaml has been modified. So it is where we are. Okay, it was an unmodified file because you committed everything, and now that you have edited this particular file, it has come on to this particular status, which says that main.xaml has been modified. So now you'll stage this particular file and commit it. Okay, so what you'll do, you'll say git commit, and you will say change in main file. Okay, I typed it, the spelling is wrong for git commit. Okay, so now what does it say? So when I did commit, okay, I actually did not stage it. So it says on branch main, changes not staged for commit, which means I'll first have to add it. So I'll say git add, and then I'll go on committing it. Okay. So git commit, where is my git commit command? Git commit, and I'll give a message. Change in main file. And as I do this, it says one file changed, change in main file. Now, if I again do git status, it will show me that on branch main, there's nothing to commit, working tree clean. Okay. So now all these things that you're doing, it's still on your local. Okay. It's still on your local. It's not on the GitHub. You go here and you cannot access anything because whatever you're doing, you're still doing it on your local. Okay. Now, if you want to push it here, okay, you want to create a repository here where you want to actually store everything. Okay, so I'll say git demo. I'll create a repository here named git demo, and I'll create this particular repository. Now, if I actually want to push it here as well, what I'll do this thing. Okay, So I'll say git remote add origin and I'll pass my URL. So this is my repository URL. And as I press enter, okay, and I have added my origin here and now I'm going to push it. As I do git push origin main, now it is actually pushing everything here. Now, everything that I've done is actually even present over here. As I go and click on code, I'll be able to see everything here. Okay, so you can see 1 minute ago, 6 minutes ago, everything now is here. And if you remember, when we made the change in the main file, we passed a comment name change in main file. So you can see the comment is here. Okay, and if you click here, you can even see who did this particular comment. So it says Anmol-Yadav, which is my username, committed 2 minutes ago. Okay, so it will show you everything. It will show you what the changes is, who has done it, when the person has done it, and it will show you everything. So that is how you can actually keep track of your code. Now, if you come back here in UiPath, there's another way how you can add it. So one way that we have seen is via the command line. The other way is if you simply go to home and you click on Teams, you'll see option here of clone repository, copy to Git and Git init. Okay. Now, since we already have an existing Git repository and we simply want to add it there, so we'll go to copy to Git. If you continue, the current project will be closed. So we'll click on continue. Okay. Let's try selecting this particular folder. And it is copying my project demo 1 to that particular project. Okay. The other way is Git init, which actually adds the current project to a new local Git repository. That is going to do the same thing that we did from command line. When we do Git init, it actually creates a directory, a hidden directory named .git. Okay. And it starts tracking it there. And then we have a clone repository as well, which means now if multiple developers are working and you want the latest, or if it is existing and you joined the particular project in between, so you'll simply take a clone of it on your local and you'll start working on it. Okay, so if you see here, there are two options. One is fork and the other one is branch. Okay, and that particular option is available with all, you can say all open source repositories that are existing. Okay, so even if you go to explore and you want to start working on an existing project, okay, so these are trending repositories today. If you actually want to start working on any of it, you can simply go to that particular repository. So you will see there are 22 branches and there are 1.1k fork. Okay, so what is the difference between the branch and the fork that we see? Okay, so when we actually say fork, so a fork is actually a duplicate copy of someone else's project. Okay, and it's entirely different, which means whatever you're doing, it would actually create a local copy, okay, to your own scope, and it will not, whatever changes you're doing will not be reflected in the original repository. Whereas if you talk about branch, so it's like an isolated environment to add. So whatever then you're doing, so whatever modification or deletion you're doing, okay, will also be reflected back there. So forking is like, of course, a cloning. So it is actually creating a copy, which means it is a cloning operation only. But it is executed on the entire repository level. Whereas if you're doing branching, that is also a kind of cloning, but it is only executed on a single repository. Okay. Now let's go back and see, okay, it's still copying. It's taking a bit of time. Meanwhile, let's open another project as well. Okay, let's go back here. Let's open this particular thing. So we saw how to do everything from the command line. We'll also see how to do the exact same thing from UiPath as well. Okay. So what we would do is we'll go to the Teams option. Okay, and we'll try to add everything to Git. So if you see here, you'll see nothing as of now is on Git, because when it is actually connected to Git, you'll even see an icon here. Before every file name and before every folder name, you'll see an icon here. Okay, I'll show you. So as of now, you can see there's no icon over here, but let's go and check. So we'll go to the team tab. We'll do the git init. Okay, and then we'll select a path where the repository should be initialized. Okay, so we can select the same path. That's not an issue. So we'll select the same path. Is not a parent of the project folder. Okay, what is the parent of the project folder? Let's go and check. Integration exercises. So we'll go back, we'll go to git init. And yeah, this is the parent project. Git exercise. I think we selected services. Okay. So now when you select the exact folder, the parent folder of that particular project, you'll get something like this over here. Okay. If you want to show unversioned files, you'll select this. And of course, you'll want to show it. So you'll just leave it like that. Now, the modified files section shows the project files that are to be added to the Git repo. Okay, so this plus icon means all of this would be added to the Git repo. Okay, and make sure that you always write a commit message and you write a meaningful commit message. Okay, so I'll say initial commit. And of course, it is mandatory, so you need to write it, but make sure that you give a meaningful name to it. Now there are two options. One is commit and the other is commit and push. Okay. So if you actually do commit, that is only going to reside on your local. But if you do commit and push, so it will commit the changes to your local and it will also push them to the remote repositories. Okay. So we'll go with the option commit and push. Once you do this, it will ask you for new remote name and it will ask you for a URL. So this URL is actually the URL of your Git repository. Okay. So suppose I'll go back to my profile. Okay. So one is that we did using command prompt, and now another that we would be doing would be using this particular thing. So I already have one created and I'm going to do it in the same. So if you go to code, you'll see options here. You'll see HTTPS, you'll see SSH, you'll see GitHub CLI. So I'll go with HTTPS. I'll copy this particular URL. I'll go back to my uipath. I'll add the URL. Okay. And if you want to add a new remote name, so you can add that name as well. So I'm going to add say main and I'll add and I'll save. So it says pushing the changes. Okay. And as you do that, you get this option and it says the current branch is out of date. Okay, so what you'll have to do, you'll have to click on the override remote content button. And what would this do? This would actually push the local version of the files to the remote repository and override the files there. So if you have anything there, it will take the latest from your local and it will push it there. Okay, so now if you come here and you refresh this particular thing, you will see 2 minutes ago, you've done initial commit and whatever was lying here has been overwritten. And you also saw one more option there, which says pull rebase. If you do that option, click the pull rebase. So it will pull the remote files and it will rebase the current branch. Okay. So that is what is there. Now, if you do any changes here, okay. And now you can see this icon that I was talking about. This icon has appeared. Okay. Which means it is connected to a remote repository. Now, if I do any changes here, I'll say test git. I'll save it. Okay. And you can see there is a pen icon here, which means this file has been modified. Okay. And if you want to actually push the changes back to Git, you'll do commit. Okay. And if you simply do commit and you say, okay, added a write line. and you'll go on commit. If you do commit, the changes are going to reside on your local only. If you do commit and push, it would also go onto the remote repository. So I'll do commit and push. If I go back here and I refresh it, you can see added a write line now. Okay. It's still taking so much time. I don't know why it is taking so much time. Okay. So now you can see all that you have done here has been even sent over there. Okay. Now Studio also comes with an option of undo the pending changes. So if you click on undo, it says the project has no changes. Okay. Because you have already committed and pushed everything to the remote repository. If suppose you have not done committed and pushed everything to the remote repository, you can even undo it. And that's a very good feature that is being provided, which means if you've done something, that you do not want to push or you're not very much confident, so just commit it and do not push it so that you can even undo the pending changes. Okay. And you can just right click here and you can even go to show history, which would actually show you all the commit messages and when it has been done and by whom it has been done. Okay. So you can see, and you can see the changes as well on which file it has been done. So you can keep a track of all of it. So this is how you actually make your local project to turn into a remote repository. Okay. So we've seen all the life cycles of it. We've seen how to initialize a repository in an existing directory, which is Git init. Now, the other thing that is left is how do we actually clone an existing repository? And there are two ways to push to Git: using HTTPS that we've already seen. The other one is using SSH. Okay. So that is, you can say, a kind of protocol. And if you do not want to go via HTTPS, or your organization is actually not allowing you to push using HTTPS, rather you want to go with a more safe option, you'll go with SSH. That is a secure shell communication protocol. If you want to go with that, that is also an option. So in the next video, we would be saying that how can you push to Git using SSH and how you can clone an existing Git repository. Whereas we'll also come across all these terms: clone, fetch, pull, commit, and all of that. We did come across few of these terms. We saw how do we push it. We saw how do we commit it. We would see how do we pull it, and we would see what is clone and what is fetch. So stay tuned. In the next video, we're going to cover how to clone an existing repository and how to use SSH, which is a safer option as compared to the HTTPS. Many banking domain, you can say many banking related companies and finance related domains, sometimes they do not allow HTTPS, and the only way how you can actually collaborate using Git is when you go with using SSH. So we're going to cover all that in the next video. So see you in the next video. Till then, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.